do you think I mean, it sounds like you do a lot of different types of coaching. What would you say is important for coaches who want to work specifically with psychedelics as far as knowledge, how they go about getting into working with psychedelics?
You do them.
Do that. Yeah.
I hate telling people, like, it's sort of, I don't really advocate, like, I'm not really trying to advocate psychedelic use necessarily. I'm really trying to advocate for consciousness and meditation and building awareness for people who use psychedelics. But if you want to be, I know psychedelic coaches out there who have gotten high like twice. And also they kind of just quit their professional job. They quit their professional job. They did psychedelics twice, and they, are really basically neither psychedelic nor a coach. So on one hand, I would steep yourself in a medicine or two so that you understand the ins and the outs of it, and that you have, just like a life coach. Isn't it always silly when you see like an 18-year-old life coach?
It's ridiculous.
And it's like, well, maybe
not necessarily.
Really?
Not necessarily. I know. I'm just saying. I know there are exceptions that prove the rule, but you would hope that like a life coach has a breadth and depth of life experience. You would hope that a psychedelic coach has a depth and breadth of psychedelic experience, so that when you say, and then that happened, you're like, oh yeah, that happens. And right, and then the fairies showed up. Of course, yeah, sometimes the fairies show up. There shouldn't be surprises,
Well, it's a super interesting conversation, because we've had that in some of our drop-in meetings. It's like, to what extent do we need experience in the field in order to coach somebody? And I guess it depends on our coaching approach, at least the way I see it. For example, you could argue from the same perspective that if you're a CEO, you would want a coach who's been a CEO, where in fact, like I have to have been, perhaps it's good to have an experience of having been in a position of great responsibility, so I can kind of empathize and sympathize with some of what you're telling me. But if I take the position of a coach who doesn't need to know your experience, because I assume that your experience is quite unique, regardless of what have I experienced, whether I have tripped before, whether I have been a CEO before, I can hold a space where you try to make sense of what's happening to you. So I think there is a valid argument that you don't need to have been an expert in having done your own psychedelic journey, whereas I think it sure helps, but sometimes it can be in the way.
Yeah, I don't know. I maybe, but the thing about that, it's a totally different landscape. Mm-hmm. I would suggest that if you're coaching a CEO, there are many things that are probably useful depending on what that CEO wants. The psychological depths that get explored, I think it would be beneficial. And I think it just, I'm just hope that people are served, right, at the deepest level that they can be.